letter arrived on a rainy Thursday morning. It was typed in an old serif font on thick, yellowing paper. No return address. Just my name, Dr. Alina Graves, and a formal invitation to visit Merrow Hill Asylum. It was an odd thing, really. I hadn't heard of Merrow Hill before, and I had no intention of working in an institution again. After 10 years working in psychiatric hospitals across the country, I'd taken early retirement. Too many screaming patients. Too many shadows that whispered at night. Still, curiosity is a disease that infects doctors just as much as it does patients. And the letter promised something unusual. Merrow Hill Asylum would like to invite you to assess our unique facility. We house no patients. We require no treatment. We exist only to be observed. I read that last line over and over. No patients. What kind of asylum was that? I called the number listed at the bottom. It rang 3 times before a voice answered raspy and barely above a whisper. Merrow Hill Asylum. We've been expecting you, Dr. Graves. I blinked. I haven't accepted. The voice chuckled softly. But you will. The call ended. 3 days later, I found myself driving along a cracked rural road just outside of Black Hollow, Maine. The map didn't even show Merrow Hill. I had to rely on handwritten directions mailed with the letter. The woods grew denser the further I went. My phone lost signal. Rain started again. Then, out of the mist, a gate appeared tall, wrought iron, and covered in vines. A rusted plaque read, MAROWHILLESYLUM. For the unseen, the unheard, the unhealed. My stomach turned. Beyond the gate was the building itself, 3 stories tall, shaped like a horseshoe, and built from pale gray stone that looked like bone. The windows were black. Every single one. Not broken, just dark. As if nothing moved inside. I parked my car outside the gate and approached on foot. As I reached for the iron bars, they creaked open by themselves. No guards. No welcome sign. Just a long path lined with dead trees. The front doors were made of heavy oak, carved with symbols I didn't recognize. As I touched the handle, it turned under my fingers. The door opened inward with a groan, revealing a silent lobby with high ceilings, black and white tiles, and flickering sconces. There was a reception desk, but no receptionist. A single file sat on the counter. It had my name on it. I opened it. Inside were pages of notes. Not written by me, but about me. My education. My patience. My insomnia. My dreams. Even my private journal entries, the ones I never shared with anyone. A line had been scribbled at the bottom in red ink. The doctor has finally arrived. Let observation begin. A cold wind blew through the hallway. The door behind me closed and locked with a loud, echoing click. I tried to stay rational. There had to be a staff. Maybe this was some elaborate onboarding. A prank. A performance art project. Maybe I was being filmed. I walked down the corridor to the right. The floor creaked under my boots. Everything smelled like antiseptic and rot. Room after room, all empty. Empty beds, empty chairs, empty restraints. Yet everything was perfectly clean, as if the patients had just vanished minutes ago. In one room, I found a name tag, patient number 03 Simon Crane. A jacket still hung from the wall hook. A diary sat on the desk. I flipped through it. The entries were unsettling. The walls listen. They shift when no one looks. The walls listen. They shift when no one looks. Doctor, Watcher told me I'm not sick. He said I'm just in the wrong timeline. At night, the screams come from beneath, but no one else hears them, or they pretend not to. I shut the book and backed away. By the time I reached the second floor, I started to hear things. Not screams, not laughter, not footsteps. Breathing. Soft, shaky, as if someone stood just behind the corner watching me. I turned. No one. I turned again. Still no one. But the breathing continued. And then it stopped. I found the head office at the end of the West Wing. A brass plate on the door read, Dr. E. Graves, head observer. I hadn't agreed to anything. I hadn't signed the contract. Yet, the room had already been arranged. My nameplate was on the desk. My photo framed on the wall. And in the corner, my suitcase. The one I left in my car. I stood frozen. Either someone had broken into my vehicle and brought it here without me noticing, or it had never left this room to begin with. That night, I tried to leave. The doors wouldn't open. My car was gone. The forest outside had changed. The road had vanished. Only endless trees remained. And the gate had turned to stone. I returned to the office and locked the door. I tried the landline on the desk. No dial tone. The computer wouldn't turn on. My phone was still dead. I sat in the office chair and stared at the walls. Then I saw it. A message written behind the painting above the fireplace, scratched into the stone. Don't watch the tapes. I hadn't seen any tapes. Not yet. But now I knew I would. Because something in this place, something not human, wanted me to. And I was starting to feel like I had been here before. Like I had never left. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not just because of the silence, but because of what was beneath it. Something was alive in the quiet. Something that wanted me to notice. At 3:03 a.m., the hallway lights outside my office flickered on by themselves. That's when I heard it. A cart rolling. Slowly. Metallic wheels squeaking on tile. Stopping just outside my office door. Then a knock. 3 soft taps. I froze. didn't move, didn't breathe. The knock came again. I opened the door with shaking hands. No one there, just a medical cart. And on it a stack of black VHS tapes labeled in white ink, greater than, observation logs, patient 01013. Beneath it, a note in the same red handwriting I'd seen before. You're here to observe. Don't look away. I wheeled the cart into the office and locked the door. There was an old TV and VCR combo unit in the corner. I hadn't noticed it before, but now it sat there like it had always belonged. I picked the first tape, Patient 001 Miriam Hollow. I inserted it. Static. Then the image cleared. A white room. A woman sat on a bed, facing the wall. Her long black hair covered most of her face. Her arms were folded tight, like she was holding herself together. No date stamp. No visible microphone. But I could hear everything. Her breathing. The flicker of the light. Then her whisper. He watches from the mirror. He walks when I sleep. The asylum feeds him, and he feeds it back. She paused, then turned suddenly toward the camera and smiled. Her eyes were completely white. And she whispered something I still can't forget. Hello, Drive. Graves, I've missed you. I hit eject. I hadn't existed when this was recorded. That woman was at least 60. The footage looked decades old. And yet she said my name. Not a coincidence. A message. Or a warning. I watched the next tape. Patient 002 Daryl Kane. He sat in a wheelchair, tied down, staring directly at the camera. His mouth didn't move, but a voice came through deep and guttural. Not his. The walls are hungry. They remember pain. They record what the world wants to forget. He began screaming without opening his mouth. The sound was unbearable, like glass breaking inside my skull. Then the screen went black. White text appeared. Doctor, Graves, you are being watched now. Observation has begun. You are subject number 014. I stepped back. Who is watching me? Was this some kind of elaborate psychological experiment? A hallucination? Had I actually gone insane? But my heartbeat was real. The sweat on my neck was real. The chill in the air that came from nowhere. Real. I turned to the mirror above the desk. And for a second, I saw someone else staring back. Not me. Not exactly. Same face, but older, paler, and smiling. I smashed the mirror with a lamp. Then everything went dark. Power out. I stepped into the hallway. The backup lights flickered red like a heartbeat. Down the corridor, a door creaked open on its own. Room 207. A chill rushed past me. I felt pulled toward it like gravity had shifted sideways. Inside room 207, I found walls covered in charcoal sketches. All of them of me. sleeping, screaming, sitting at the desk watching the tapes. Then one final drawing. Me, lying on an operating table, eyes wide open, mouth sewn shut. Below it, last patient, the doctor. She finally understood. I ran. No direction. Just away. Down staircases that twisted impossibly. Through doors that led back to the same hallway I'd just escaped. The asylum had turned into a loop. And in every corner, something began whispering. Overlapping voices. Old, young, male, female. Chanting the same phrase over and over. She's here. She sees. She remembers. Then silence. And I heard a voice behind me. Not a whisper. A low, calm male voice. Doctor. Graves. You're not observing anymore. You're remembering. I turned. There was no one there. I collapsed against the wall. What did he mean remembering? I had never been here before. Never heard of Merrow Hill Asylum until that letter arrived. I was sure of it. And yet, as I stood in the hallway, surrounded by whispers that faded as quickly as they came, memories that weren't mine began to surface. A child's scream. Cold metal restraints. The smell of sulfur. A door labeled Ward X. I blinked and shook it off. Delusions. Hallucinations. Trauma resurfacing due to isolation. It was textbook. But even as I tried to explain it away, my feet moved on their own. Deeper into the asylum. Past the familiar hallways. To a stairwell that didn't appear on any map. At the bottom of the steps, behind a rusted metal gate, was a single black plaque. Ward X, unregistered patients only. No entry without permission from the house. The house. The lock had no keyhole. Instead, it opened when I touched it, as if it had been waiting for me. The air inside was wrong. Too still. Too thick. Like walking through water. The lights buzzed overhead, some flickering in and out like weak fireflies. This ward was forgotten, walls cracked, floors stained. Yet the rooms were not empty. They were full of furniture. And something worse. Placeholders? That's the only word I can think of for them. Figures covered in white sheets, sitting in chairs. Lying in beds. Standing in corners. Completely still. Not mannequins. Not patients. Something in between. I stepped closer to one of them. Its chest moved. Barely. Breathing. I pulled back the sheet. And gasped. It was me. Pale. Eyes closed. Asleep. Hooked to a machine. I stumbled away, sheet falling from my hands. Every figure in the room began to stir heads, slowly turning beneath their covers. But none revealed their faces. They only whispered in unison. We are the memories you denied. Then silence. I ran into a fire room nearby, slamming the door behind me. Inside, it was strangely untouched. Clean, organized. cabinet after cabinet labeled by year, stretching back over a century. I looked for my name and found it. Graves, Elena, file number 14, date admitted, Oct 27, 1993. That couldn't be right. I was born in 1989. Admitted at age 4. Admitted at age 4. I opened the folder. Inside, a drawing of the asylum done in crayon. Child handwriting that said, "He lives in the halls. He wears the doctors. He makes us forget." And below that, a photograph. Me, 4 years old, crying, held down by 2 nurses. A man in a black coat stood behind them, his face scratched out. In red ink, someone had written, "Observer 0. I dropped the file and stumbled backward. A bell began to ring through the ward. Not loud, but deep, like a church bell underwater. The sound made my vision blur. Footsteps echoed down the corridor outside. Slow, heavy, wet. I peeked through the door crack. A figure passed. Tall, dressed in a doctor's coat, but his head was a mirror. Polished, oval-shaped, reflecting nothing but static. Where he walked, lights died. The mirror doctor. I had seen him before. In my dreams as a child. In the stories I used to tell myself were just imagination. He didn't speak. He didn't need to, because his reflection showed what you refused to see. I waited until the steps faded, then slipped out, heart pounding. At the end of the hall, another door. Painted red. A handprint smeared across it, and above it, a name scratched in metal. The theater. I opened it. Inside, rows of empty seats faced a stage. And on that stage, a projector screen. The projector clicked on by itself. No reel. No wires. Just light. And then it began playing. Not a movie. My memories. Me as a teenager in a hospital room. Screaming. Nurses holding me down. A doctor asking, "Do you still see him, Alina?" Me at university whispering in my sleep, "He never left. He never left." Me as a licensed psychiatrist. Watching tapes. Writing notes I never remembered taking. Then me arriving at Marrow Hill. Not now, but years ago. Wearing the same coat. Carrying the same notebook. A voice whispered behind me. "You weren't invited, Elena. You came back." I turned. And finally, I saw him. The man from the photos. The mirror doctor. But now his face was my face. Not reflected. Replaced. He stepped toward me and spoke in my voice. "The asylum isn't a place. It's a wound. And you are its scab." I screamed and the projector exploded, sending shards of glass into the seats. When I looked back up, the theater was empty. The screen burned black, and on it, a single word appeared. Remember. I I don't remember how I got back to my office. I just appeared there. Blood on my sleeves. My own. I wasn't sure. The mirror above the desk was whole again. No cracks. But the reflection it showed wasn't mine. It showed me standing in Ward X, holding a clipboard, nodding slowly, cold, professional. Observer 0, the original, the first. And I wasn't looking at a recording. I was watching myself. The tapes were gone. The card, the TV, the chair, all of it. In their place was a thick leather-bound journal, open to a page I didn't recognize, writing, greater than. The observer's always watching, but sometimes she watches herself. Below that, coordinates. A location beneath the hospital, long sealed off. I had to go. If there was a final truth, one last explanation, it was there. I made my way back to the stairwell. Down. Past the basement. Past Ward X. Deeper. The walls grew damp. Moss-covered. Ancient. Like no one had walked here in decades. I reached a steel door, circular like a vault, with a handprint scanner. No power. But when I touched it, it opened. Because it had always known me. Inside, a chamber. Stone walls. Dozens of chairs in a circle. Each chair faced inward, toward a sunken pit filled with ash. On the wall, a symbol I had seen in the drawings. An eye, split down the middle, with a needle through the pupil. A sign of the observers, or perhaps their god. In the center of the ash pit sat a reel-to-reel recorder. I pressed play. My voice emerged. Subject number 014 is progressing. She has begun to reject false identity. Memories are unlocking. Trauma is reconstructing self-image. I didn't remember saying this. Next phase, reabsorption. Once she accepts the role, the cycle can reset. I pressed stop, but the recorder kept speaking. Now in his voice. The mirror doctor. Welcome home, Alina. You tried to leave. You tried to forget. But the asylum never lets go of its doctors. You made them forget you existed. But I remembered. I always do. Because I am what's left when you close your eyes. The lights above me flickered. Ash swirled in the pit like breath. The chairs began to rock on their own. And from the walls, whispers rose. Observer 0. Observer 0. Observer 0. I covered my ears. But the sound wasn't just outside me, it was inside my skull. Then came the last vision. Not a dream. A memory. I saw a child version of myself. Locked in a padded room. Crying. Drawing on the walls with bloodied fingers. Then me, as an adult, standing over her. Clipboard in hand. Stone-faced. The child cried out, "Please let me out." And I answered, "No. You must forget first. Only then can you return." It was me. I had locked myself away. I had been the patient. I had been the observer, and the only way to cope with what I saw was to become someone else. The asylum wasn't haunted. It was a construct, a prison made of memories, regrets, denial, built by minds like mine to hide truths too painful to bear. And now the cycle was collapsing, because I remembered. I saw the mirror doctor rise from the shadows, his mirrored face cracked down the middle, and from the crack my reflection smiled back. "Doctor Graves," he said in my voice, "do you understand now?" I nodded. "I was never here to cure the patients," I whispered. "I was here because I am one." The walls began to fall apart. Not physically, but conceptually. Ceilings melted into sky. Hallways curled like paper on fire. The asylum peeled away like an illusion ending. And in its place, I saw rows of hospital beds, a modern psychiatric facility. Doctors in white, machines humming, and in the middle, me. Eyes open, paralyzed, hooked to IVs and wires. One of the staff noticed and yelled, "We've got brain activity. She's coming out of it." I opened my real eyes for the first time in 12 years. I woke up in a white room. Clean. Sterile. Bright. Machines beeped beside me, monitors tracking everything: heart rate, oxygen, brain waves. A nurse gasped and called for a doctor. Moments later, people flooded in. Excited voices. Flashing lights. Questions I couldn't answer. "Dr. Graves, can you hear us? You've been in a coma since 2013. We thought you'd never come back." But I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I only stared at the ceiling while the truth settled like dust around me. Everything inside the asylum had been my mind. A fractured, twisted construction, a coping mechanism. To escape something. Something real. As the days passed, I learned more from overheard conversations and fragments of notes they tried to keep hidden from me. I had been found 12 years ago, unresponsive, inside the ruins of Marrow Hill Asylum, a real place, but long abandoned. I had gone there alone. No one knew why. But when they recovered me, I was clinging to a blood-stained notebook. Mine! Inside were patient drawings, strange symbols, and entries signed only as Observer Zero. The media called it a mental break, but it wasn't. It was a return. Eventually, they let me sit in a wheelchair, speak softly, respond to simple questions. They showed me photos of my family, of my friends. Most were gone now, moved on. A few had died. Only one person came regularly to visit. Dr. Harris, a neurologist who had been a student when I first disappeared. He sat beside me one afternoon and said, "We thought it was some kind of fugue state, but your brain waves, they never went quiet. You were somewhere. Can you tell us what you saw?" I tried to answer, but the words never came out right. How could I explain that the asylum I wandered for years had watched me back? That my mind had created not a dream, but a dimension? That I wasn't sure if this room, this hospital, even Harris was truly real? That night, I dreamt again. Back in Marrow Hill. The halls were empty. No whispers. No mirror doctor. But on the wall, scrawled in charcoal, greater than. Did you escape or did you forget again? And below it, the red door. The one from the theater. The one that always led somewhere worse. I woke up sweating, screaming, clutching at my own chest. Nurses ran in to calm me. They gave me sedatives. But they didn't help, because the next morning, the red door was in the hallway. At first I thought it was a hallucination, a trick of trauma and medication. But the staff walked right past it, never noticing, never reacting. I wheeled closer. The surface was chipped and burnt, just like before. The handprint still smeared across it, the smell of sulfur behind it. I heard it again. We are still here, Doctor. Graves! You cannot wake up from a place you built. I rolled back, shut my eyes, tried to breathe. I asked Harris the next day, carefully, do you believe in residual consciousness? That part of the mind can remain in a dream even after you wake. He hesitated, then nodded. Some trauma is too deep to surface all at once, especially in cases like yours, where identity splits into constructs. You didn't just forget. You built an architecture to contain the memory. Then I whispered, what if I left something behind in there? He looked at me carefully. Do you mean someone? I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure myself. The red door appeared again, this time open. And this time, I didn't look away. I rolled toward it, slowly, heart thudding like a drum. Inside was a hallway lined with mirrors. Each one showed a different version of me. Child, adult, doctor, patient, alive, dead, screaming, smiling. At the far end of the corridor stood Observer Zero. Myself, but with no eyes, just sockets filled with ink. She held the same notebook I had woken up clutching. She spoke in a voice made of every voice I've ever had. You left me behind. You left us all. The asylum didn't break you, Alina. You built it to hide me. Suddenly, I felt the weight of the sedatives lift. I was standing again, but not in the hospital bed. I was back in the mirror corridor, barefoot, cold. Zero stepped toward me and said, finish what you started, or the door will never close. She handed me the notebook. On the final page, scrawled in shaking ink, one of us must stay. Choose. And I understood. To truly wake up to be free, I had to leave behind the part of me that clung to the asylum. The observer. The one who watched, but never lived. And she looked ready. Ready to remain. I turned to the mirrors. One showed the real hospital. My body in bed. Another showed Marrow Hill, black and endless. The final one showed me walking into the sun. Not as doctor, not as patient, but as a whole person. I stepped toward it. Zero did not stop me. She just whispered, if you forget me again, I will remember for both of us. I stepped through the mirror. The corridor of reflections vanished behind me, swallowed in a pulse of cold light. And then, silence. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the real world. At least, that's what they told me. I could move my hands again. I could walk. I could breathe. My body had returned thinner, older. But it was mine. Doctor. Harris ran a dozen tests. Nurses wept. Reporters hovered outside. Doctor. Alina Graves, they said, returns after 12 years in a coma. But I knew better. It hadn't been sleep. It had been containment. Weeks passed. Therapy. Public attention. Book offers. A movie deal even. But I turned it all down. Because I wasn't sure what was real anymore. I started drawing the asylum again. From memory. The corridors, the theater, the red door. Each detail came effortlessly, like muscle memory. Sometimes in dreams, I still saw Observer Zero watching me through the mirrored glass of my mind. She never moved. She just waited. One day, I returned to Marrow Hill. What remained of it? A burned husk in the forest, swallowed by vines and moss. They had sealed it off after my disappearance. I walked the perimeter. Everything felt smaller now. Dull. Dead. Until I found the basement door, half buried in earth. I kicked it open and descended slowly, down into the dark. At the bottom, I reached the final chamber. The ash pit was gone. No chairs. No symbols. Just a single mirror on the wall, cracked down the center. And in it, I didn't see myself. I saw every patient I had ever imagined. Erased faces, twitching hands, eyes that never blinked. They looked at me as one and whispered, "You left the door open." I turned to run, but the stairs behind me were gone. The chamber stretched outward, becoming a familiar corridor. The asylum had rebuilt itself, room by room, as if it had been waiting for me to come back and finish the job. I ran through the halls, my breath shallow, screaming for the exit. And just like before, I found the observation room. Only this time, I wasn't standing outside the window. I was inside. And Dr. Harris was watching me from the other side, clipboard in hand, expression cold, professional. He mouthed words I couldn't hear until they echoed in the chamber. Subject number 014. Returned. Repetition begins. I slammed my fists on the glass. No, this is over. But the world around me flickered. The ceiling tiles peeled. The cameras turned. And I saw it. I was never the first observer. I was one of many. Doctors, patients, all trapped in roles. Roles that recycled with every attempt to escape. Every one of us thinking we were special, that we had broken the cycle. But there was never an escape, just a change of room. I stood still, let the illusion fall away. And now I understood the asylum. It was not a building, not even a dream. It was a system. A mental mechanism passed between minds. A virus of thought. A mirror reflecting itself over and over until nothing was left but watchers watching watchers. And now, I had become the final one. The last watcher. So I did what they had done before me. I took the chair, faced the window, picked up the clipboard, and wrote my final entry. Subject has accepted position. Observer 0 reestablished. Asylum integrity stable. Until the next attempt at escape. They will come. New minds. Curious doctors. Broken patients. People who think they're investigating something real. And I will greet them. I will show them the halls, the mirrors, the theater, because that is what the watcher does. We do not heal. We do not help. We remember what others are not meant to remember, and we make sure they forget. So if you ever find yourself standing in an abandoned hospital, if the corridors seem to stretch too long, if a mirror refuses to show your face, if a red door appears at the end of the hall, turn around, run, because you've already been here, and the asylum is already watching. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow other horror stories.